The Unified Galactic Confederation, or UGC as it was more commonly known throughout the 17,000 inhabited worlds under its jurisdiction, represented the pinnacle of interstellar governance. Its reach extended across 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way, encompassing species from the silicon-based quantumites of Proxima Centauri to the gaseous collective intelligences of the Andromeda Fringe. Over 12 millennia of existence, the UGC had perfected the art of interstellar bureaucracy with a precision that would make any earthbound organization weep with envy. Their technology was, quite frankly, ridiculous. Faster-than-light travel had become so commonplace that school children used it for field trips. Quantum teleportation made physical transport of goods seem quaint. The UGC's artificial intelligence network, Unamines, coordinated quadrillions of operations per nanosecond across vast distances, ensuring that not a single form went unfiled, not a single regulation went unenforced. In this perfect clockwork of galactic proportion, the UGC extraction core represented the sharpest scalpel in the administrative surgeon's kit. These weren't your run-of-the-mill enforcers. No, the extraction core specialized in the delicate art of acquiring high-value targets, be they persons of interest, data crystals containing sensitive information, or artifacts of cosmic significance, with surgical precision. The core success rate hovered at a mind-boggling 99.873% across 2 centuries of operations. Each mission was planned down to the quantum level, with contingencies for contingencies and backup plans for the backup plans of backup plans. Their tactical simulations ran through billions of scenarios before a single operative even put on their uniform. Success wasn't just expected, it was mathematically inevitable. Another flawless extraction, Commander Zevuru, would typically announce upon returning to headquarters, her tentacle ridge pulsing with the blue glow of satisfaction that was characteristic of her species. The Octavian commander had personally overseen 347 successful extractions without a single failure. The probability equations never lied. The tactical matrices never failed. The cosmic order remained undisturbed. And yet, in the gleaming corridors of UGC headquarters, whispers began to circulate. Rumors of extraction teams that had gone in with 99.999% probability of success, only to emerge with nothing but excuses. Stories of targets that seemed to anticipate their every move, as if the Core's perfect planning had somehow become their greatest weakness. Cosmic irony, muttered an elder Vulcan sniper over a glass of fermented plasma in the officer's lounge. The universe has a way of laughing at those who think they've mastered its mysteries. Most dismissed such talk as the grumblings of those who had failed to adhere to protocols. The equations couldn't be wrong. The tactics couldn't be predictable. It was simply impossible. But Admiral Zaios, the 16-tentacled mastermind behind the Core's strategic division, had begun to notice patterns in these rare failures. They were increasing in frequency. The targets were adapting. Something was wrong in the perfect machine. As the gleaming capital ships of the UGC Extraction Corps aligned themselves for their next mission, retrieving a senior scientist who had defected to the rival hegemony with critical bioweapon research, no one suspected that this routine operation would trigger a philosophical crisis that would reshape the very foundations of UGC tactical doctrine. No one except Admiral Zaios, whose upper left tentacle had been twitching for days. Among his species, this was the equivalent of a human experiencing a persistent eye twitch, a biological warning system that something unexpected was about to occur. Commander Zevuru, the Admiral addressed the briefing room through his communication orb. I want you to pay particular attention to anomalous behavior patterns during this extraction. Something tells me this one won't go according to plan. Commander Zevuru's skin rippled with the faintest pattern of indignation. With all due respect, Admiral, our success probability calculations are at 99.873%. We've accounted for every variable. The Admiral's tentacle twitched more violently. That's what concerns me, Commander. Every variable we know about. The Tachyoni triplets, Three identical energy beings contained in humanoid exoskeletons who served as the Corps' tactical specialists exchanged glances. The middle triplet spoke, her voice a harmonious buzz. "Admiral, we've run 17,000 simulations. The target has no possible escape route that we haven't anticipated." Admiral Zyos let all 16 of his tentacles ripple in the gesture his species used to indicate resigned acceptance. "Proceed as planned, Commander. But keep an open communication channel. I want real-time updates." As the briefing concluded and the extraction team prepared to depart, no one noticed the Admiral's smallest tentacle curling into the shape that, in his culture, symbolized impending doom. The operation began exactly as the 17,000 simulations had predicted. The UGC stealth cruiser emerged from hyperspace precisely 3.6 light seconds from the Hegemony Research Station orbiting Tau Ceti. Their signature masking technology rendered them effectively invisible to conventional detection systems. The infiltration team, led by Commander Zevuru herself, teleported onto the station using coordinates so precise that they materialized within molecules of their intended position. The Vulcan sniper took up his position at junction C7, his ocular implants allowing him to monitor 7 corridors simultaneously. The Tachyoni triplets dispersed to the station's 3 security nodes, ready to implement the 16-layer encryption bypass that would give them control of all automated systems. Everything was proceeding with textbook perfection. Commander Zevuru checked her chronometer. 3 minutes and 42 seconds into the operation. Exactly on schedule. That's when everything went sideways. The station's alarms didn't just activate. They screamed with a frequency designed specifically to disrupt Octavian nervous systems. Commander Zevuru's tentacles contracted painfully as the sound assaulted her auditory receptors. Through watering eye spots, she saw security doors slamming shut in sequences that weren't supposed to be possible with the station's operating system. "Triplets, report." She managed to communicate through the tactical network. "Security systems are adaptive," came the disjointed reply from the first triplet. "They're using our own bypass algorithms against us." The Vulcan sniper's voice cut through the chaos. "Hostiles approaching from all monitored corridors. They're using UGC tactical formations. Our tactics, our formations." Commander Zevuru's mind raced through possibilities, each more improbable than the last. Fall back to extraction point alpha. Priority is team preservation. The retreat was as humiliating as it was chaotic. The team barely managed to teleport back to their ship before the station's weapons systems locked onto their position. As they accelerated into hyperspace, Commander Zevuru stared at the mission log in disbelief. Mission failed. Target not acquired. First personal failure in 348 attempts. The debriefing room at UGC headquarters had never felt so cold. Admiral Zyos's holographic projection dominated the center of the room, all 16 tentacles now perfectly still, a sign of extreme displeasure among his kind. "Explain," was all he said. Commander Zevuru's skin had taken on the grayish tinge of deep shame. "They anticipated everything, Admiral. Every protocol, every contingency. It was as if they had access to our tactical database and simulation results." "They did." The Admiral's voice was flat. A ripple of shock passed through the assembled team members. "Not directly," the Admiral continued, "but they've been studying us, learning from each encounter. Our perfect predictability has become our greatest vulnerability." The first Tachyoni triplet's exoskeleton hummed with agitation. "But our algorithms are constantly evolving. Our tactical approaches shift based on logical progressions that, to a sufficiently advanced analytical system, might as well be a published manual," the Admiral interrupted. "We have become too perfect, too precise, too predictable." Silence fell across the room. The concept was almost blasphemous within UGC doctrine. Perfection was the goal. Precision was the path. Predictability was simply the price of optimization. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Commander Zevuru finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Admiral Zaios's primary tentacles formed a pattern that roughly translated as brace yourselves for ideological disruption. We need to introduce an element of chaos into our methodology. We need something unpredictable, illogical, and occasionally brilliant in ways that defy computational modeling. The Vulcan sniper narrowed his compound eyes. You can't possibly mean... Yes, Admiral Zaios said with what might have been a sigh if his species possessed lungs. We need a human. The uproar was immediate and intense. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as the unruly children of the cosmic community. While they had developed spaceflight and were nominally members of the UGC, they were widely regarded as too volatile, too emotional, and far too unpredictable to be trusted with sensitive operations. A primate? On extraction team. The second Tachyone triplets exoskeleton actually sparked with indignation. They're notorious for playing with fire. Literally, they discover a new combustible substance, and their first instinct is to see how spectacular an explosion they can create. Commander Varu's tentacles writhed in distress. Admiral, with all due respect, humans lack the discipline, the precision, the very cognitive architecture required for our operations. Exactly, Admiral Zaios replied, his tentacles now forming the pattern for checkmate in the complex game of tactical dimensions popular in his culture. That is precisely why we need one. The grumbling continued, but the Admiral's decision was final. As the meeting dispersed, Commander Varu approached the holographic projection. How will we even find a human suited to our needs? Their military structures are primitive, their intelligence operatives crude. Admiral Zaios's tentacles shifted to a pattern indicating sly amusement. Oh, we won't be recruiting from their military or intelligence services. We need someone truly unpredictable. I've taken the liberty of having our Earth observation team identify a candidate. A holographic dossier materialized between them. Commander Varu's eye spots widened as she scanned the information. A thief? You want us to recruit a common criminal? Not common at all, the Admiral corrected. This particular human has a remarkable talent for improvisation and has consistently defeated security systems designed by some of the best minds on their planet. But they've been incarcerated multiple times, and yet they always find their way out, always in ways that the prison designers never anticipated. The Admiral's tentacles formed the pattern for perfect irony. Besides, they were just released from their latest confinement yesterday. Perfect timing. Commander Varu's skin flushed a deep purple, the Octavian equivalent of a frustrated blush. This will be noted in my formal protest, Admiral. Duly noted, Commander. Now, prepare your team to welcome Operative H. I suspect it will be an educational experience for all involved. The UGC recruitment team found their target at a small coffee shop in what humans called Seattle, a perpetually rain-soaked settlement that seemed to perfectly mirror the team's mood. They had spent weeks analyzing potential candidates from Earth's military special forces, intelligence agencies, and even their primitive space programs. None had met Admiral Zaios's peculiar criteria. Too disciplined, too methodical, too predictable. The human sitting before them now was anything but predictable. Known professionally as the Ghost, and now designated Operative H in UGC files, the individual had a record of 37 successful high-security infiltrations across Earth's most protected installations. Not for terrorism or violence, merely for the procurement of valuable items that wealthy collectors paid handsomely to acquire. Let me get this straight, said Operative H, stirring a fifth packet of sugar into an already sweet coffee concoction. You want me to join some kind of space special forces team to steal stuff from other aliens? The UGC representative, disguised as a human business executive, nodded stiffly. Your particular skills and unconventional thinking would be valuable to our organization. Operative H leaned back in the chair, seemingly amused. And what makes you think I won't just turn you down and walk away? Or better yet, call them in black or whatever and tell them there's an alien trying to recruit me in a Starbucks. 3 reasons. The disguised recruiter said calmly. First, you're currently on parole and have no legitimate income prospects. Second, we're offering compensation equivalent to what you would earn from 50 high-risk thefts, without the risk of reincarceration. And third, the recruiter leaned forward. You're bored. Earth's security systems no longer challenge you. We're offering you puzzles you've never dreamed of. The ghost of a smile played across Operative H's face. When do we start? The first meeting between Operative H and the UGC Extraction Corps' elite team went about as well as a matter-antimatter handshake. Commander Zevaru watched in horror as the humans sauntered into the briefing room aboard the UGC command ship, wearing what appeared to be casual Earth attire rather than the regulation uniform they had been provided. Worse still, they carried a container of that noxious Earth stimulant beverage, coffee, despite explicit instructions about prohibited substances in secure areas. Sup? Operative H nodded to the assembled alien specialists, dropping into a chair and propping their feet on the holographic tactical display table, disrupting a three-dimensional projection of their target location. The Vulcan sniper's compound eyes narrowed to pinpricks of disgust. The Tachyoni triplets' exoskeletons hummed at a frequency that indicated profound distress. Commander Zevaru's tentacles unconsciously formed the pattern that, in her culture, represented encountering excrement on a pristine floor. You will remove your locomotive appendages from the tactical display, she managed to say with remarkable restraint, and you will address this team with the respect befitting UGC special operatives. Operative H glanced around, then slowly lowered their feet. Sorry about that. First day jitters, you know? So, you guys are the Space SEAL team, huh? Gotta say, I was expecting more. I don't know, laser guns and jetpacks. The first Tachyoni triplet buzzed indignantly. Our equipment is beyond your primitive comprehension. The molecular disassembly projector alone represents technology your species won't develop for at least. Is that the laser gun? Operative H interrupted, pointing to a sleek device on the triplet's exoskeleton. It's not a laser gun, it's a... Cool. So when do I get my space armor? Operative H gestured to the form-fitting tactical suits worn by the team. Commander Zevaru's patience, never abundant, was rapidly diminishing. You have been provided with an adaptive compression suit calibrated for human physiology. It is in your quarters. Yeah, I saw that. Looks uncomfortable. Mind if I stick with jeans and a hoodie? I do my best work when I'm comfortable. The commander's skin began to mottle with patches of red, the Octavian equivalent of a dangerous spike in blood pressure. This is not a negotiation. You will wear the standard issue equipment. Operative H took a long, deliberate sip of coffee. Here's the thing, Commander Tentacles. Zevaru, she corrected icily. Right, Commander Zevaru. Your boss, the admiral with the impressive appendage count. Hire me specifically because I don't do things your way. So maybe, just maybe, you should let me operate how I operate best. Unless you want a repeat of whatever disaster made you desperate enough to recruit a human thief in the first place. The tension in the room could have been cut with a molecular disassembly projector. It was at this precise moment that Admiral Zyos chose to make his entrance, his holographic form materializing in the center of the briefing room. I see you're all getting acquainted, he observed, his tentacles forming a pattern that somehow conveyed both amusement and authority. Admiral, Commander Zevaru began, her voice tight. The human refuses to adhere to basic protocols and... Excellent, the Admiral interrupted, surprising everyone. That's precisely why they're here. He turned his attention to Operative H. Though I would appreciate it if you could refrain from disrupting tactical displays. They're rather expensive to calibrate. Operative H gave a mock salute with her coffee cup. No problem, Boss Squid. So what exactly am I stealing for you folks? The Admiral's tentacles rippled in what might have been a chuckle. Commander Zevaru, please brief our new colleague on Operation Crystal Retrieval. With obvious reluctance, the commander activated the tactical display. A holographic image of a space station appeared, rotating slowly to reveal its complex structure. This is Hegemony Research Station Epsilon 9, she explained. Our target is a data crystal containing vital research on biological weapons that could threaten numerous UGC species. The scientist who developed this research has defected to the hegemony, and we must retrieve the crystal before the research can be weaponized. This is the same mission we failed to complete 3 standard cycles ago, added the Vulcan sniper, his compound eyes fixed on Operative H as if expecting them to flee at the mention of previous failure. And why'd you fail? Operative H asked, studying the holographic station with unexpected intensity. The commander's skin darkened with embarrassment. They anticipated our approach. They knew our methods, our formations, our extraction protocols. So basically, you were too perfect, Operative H nodded, poking a finger through the hologram to indicate a particular section. What's this part here? That's their primary security hub, the second Tachyon triplet answered. We attempted to bypass its 16-layer encryption using. Forget bypassing. Operative H interrupted. What if we just make it crash? The room fell silent. The concept of deliberately inducing a system failure rather than elegantly circumventing security was so foreign to the UGC operatives that they seemed unable to process the suggestion. Crash. The security system? Commander Zavuru finally repeated, as if Operative H had suggested they breathe vacuum for fun. Yeah, overload it. Feed it garbage data. Make it have a nervous breakdown. Systems designed to detect perfect infiltration might not know what to do with a complete mess. The Tachyon triplets' exoskeletons began vibrating at an anxious frequency. But our approach is always to minimize disruption, to leave no trace, which is exactly what they're expecting. Operative H stood up and walked around the holographic display. Look, you guys are like professional ballet dancers trying to sneak across a stage. Everyone's watching for perfect pirouettes. No one's watching for the drunk guy who stumbles in from the audience. Admiral Zyos's tentacles formed what might have been the equivalent of a thoughtful stroke of the chin. You're suggesting we deliberately perform poorly? Exactly. Operative H pointed at the Admiral with enthusiasm. Fly badly. Act confused. Be the last thing they'd expect from the perfect UGC. Commander Zavara looked as though she might be ill. This is absurd. Our pilots are trained for precision navigation. Our infiltration specialists practice for years to achieve perfect stealth. And that's why you failed, Operative H said bluntly. Time for a new approach. Plan less. Improvise more. Admiral Zyos turned to the commander. Prepare a hybrid operational plan. Incorporate Operative H's methodology alongside our standard protocols. Admiral, with all due respect. That's an order, Commander, the Admiral said firmly, his tentacles now perfectly still in the pattern that indicated absolute authority. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when traditional wisdom has failed us. As the Admiral's hologram dissolved, Commander Zavuru turned to Operative H with what passed for resignation in her species. Very well. We depart in 6 hours. If you insist on wearing your casual attire, at least allow our medical team to implant a subcutaneous translator and communicator. Operative H grinned. See, we're compromising already. This is going to be great. The commander's skin turned a shade of green that, had any human xenobiologist been present, would have been recognized as the Octavian chromatic equivalent of profound existential dread. The UGC stealth cruiser hung in the void, its position calculated to within quantum margins of error to avoid detection by hegemony sensors. Inside the ship's bridge, an unprecedented scene was unfolding. You want me to what? The Quantumite pilot's crystalline structure was vibrating with what appeared to be distress. Fly badly, Operative H repeated, leaning casually against the navigation console. Wobble a bit. Take a slightly incorrect approach vector. Maybe even hiccup the engines once or twice. The pilot turned its crystalline face toward Commander Zavuru, clearly seeking rational intervention. The human suggestion has been incorporated into our approach strategy, the commander confirmed, each word seemingly extracted under duress. Admiral Zyos has approved this modified protocol. The Quantumite's crystals dimmed slightly in what might have been resignation. Very well. Initiating imprecise approach. What followed was perhaps the most agonizing flight experience in UGC operational history. The ship lurched and stuttered through space, its trajectory resembling the path of an inebriated insect rather than the precisely calculated approach vector typical of UGC operations. Commander Zayvaru's tentacles were curled so tightly from stress that they threatened to tie themselves into permanent knots. The Tacchioni triplets had retreated into a corner of the bridge, their exoskeletons vibrating at a frequency that suggested deep psychological distress. Only the Vulcan sniper seemed somewhat at ease, his compound eyes watching Operative H with what might have been the first stirrings of reluctant respect. Approaching outer sensor perimeter, the pilot announced, its crystalline voice tinged with embarrassment at its own deliberately poor performance. Everyone held their breath, or whatever passed for breathing in their respective physiologies, as they waited for the hegemony's proximity alarms to sound. Nothing happened. We're through the first layer, the pilot reported, disbelief evident in its tone. Continuing, erratic approach. Operative H grinned at Commander Zayvaru. See? Their systems are looking for the perfect ballet dancer, with a drunk stumbling across the stage. We have not yet reached the primary security grid, the commander replied tersely, but there was a faint lightening of her skin tone that suggested the beginnings of cautious optimism. The ship continued its undignified approach, weaving and bobbing through space like a damaged vessel, trying to limp to safety. Each time they passed another layer of hegemony sensors without detection, the tension on the bridge noticeably decreased. Holding position at insertion distance, the pilot finally announced, its crystalline structure glowing with what might have been relief or surprise, or both. We remain undetected. Commander Zayvaru turned to Operative H with newfound, if grudging, respect. It seems your unconventional approach has merit, but the station infiltration will be far more complex than simply approaching undetected. That's why we're going to split up, Operative H said, as if it were the most natural suggestion in the world. Your team does what it does best, the perfect precise operation that will draw all eyes and security resources. Meanwhile, I go in the back door. The commander's skin flushed dark with alarm. Absolutely not. UGC protocol explicitly forbids solo operations in hostile territory. Good thing I don't work for UGC then, Operative H replied cheerfully. I'm a contractor, remember? Look, your team has all the fancy gear and training. You'll make a perfect distraction while I slip in, grab the crystal, and slip out. Classic misdirection. Before Commander Zayvaru could formulate a suitably outraged response, a communication orb activated, revealing Admiral Zyoz's holographic form. The human suggestion aligns with my thinking, the Admiral said without preamble. A dual approach strategy maximizes our probability of success. Admiral, the risk to the human is mine to take, Operative H interrupted. Besides, I've been doing this solo for years. Having a team is actually the weird part for me. The Admiral's tentacles formed a pattern that somehow conveyed finality. It's decided. Prepare for dual infiltration. Commander, you will lead the primary team as planned. Operative H will pursue an alternative approach. As the Admiral's hologram dissipated, Commander Zayvaru fixed Operative H with all her eye spots. If you jeopardize this mission, if your unorthodox methods result in failure or casualty, then you can say I told you so all the way back to UGC headquarters. Operative H finished for her. But if I succeed where your perfect plan failed, maybe you buy me a coffee afterward. For the first time, the commander's skin shifted toward a hue that, in her species, indicated something approaching amusement. We do not consume your primitive stimulants. Figure of speech, Commander. Now, let me tell you how I plan to enter a supposedly impenetrable space station through what's essentially the garbage chute. The UGC infiltration team materialized inside Hegemony Research Station Epsilon 9 with characteristic precision, each member appearing exactly where planned, down to the molecular level. Commander Zaveru's tentacles quickly formed the silent command patterns that sent her team spreading through the station according to their meticulously rehearsed protocol. The Vulcan sniper took up position at a junction overseeing 3 main corridors, his compound eyes capable of tracking multiple targets simultaneously. The Tachyoni triplets dispersed toward the station's security nodes, prepared to implement their complex bypassing algorithms. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Except this time, the plan included one glaring irregularity. They were deliberately making their presence known. Security alert detected. The first Tachyoni triplet reported through the communication network. Response teams mobilizing. Maintain position and continue standard protocol. Commander Zaveru responded. Draw their attention as discussed. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the station, something peculiar was happening in a maintenance access port. A service droid was behaving erratically, spinning in circles, bumping into walls, and emitting occasional bursts of what sounded suspiciously like human profanity. Any sufficiently observant security officer might have noticed that the droid's identification number was impossible, containing characters that didn't exist in the hegemony's classification system. Any sufficiently paranoid security AI might have questioned why a maintenance droid was accessing sections of the station that required no maintenance. But all security resources were currently focused on the UGC infiltration team that had brazenly teleported into the main corridors. Inside the malfunctioning droid, Operative H cursed as they navigated the maintenance tunnels. "This thing handles like a shopping cart with 3 broken wheels," they muttered into their communicator. "The service droid shell was not designed for human operation," came the clipped response from Commander Zaveru. "It was meant merely to conceal your biosignature." "Yeah, well, next time maybe ask me before picking my disguise. I could have gone with lost delivery person or something that doesn't involve being stuck in a trash can with legs." Despite the complaints, Operative H was making remarkable progress. While the UGC team engaged in what amounted to a highly choreographed distraction, drawing security forces into predictable response patterns, the disguised human was wobbling their way toward the research section where the data crystal was stored. Approaching the primary research lab, Operative H reported, "How's the distraction going?" "We have engaged with security forces on 3 levels," Commander Zaveru replied tersely. "Casualties are minimal, but we cannot maintain this position indefinitely." "Roger that." Going in, the lab door was guarded by 2 hegemony security officers, large, reptilian beings with energy weapons and enhanced sensory organs. Between them stood a security scanner designed to detect unauthorized personnel. Operative H considered the options. The UGC approach would involve complex sensor spoofing, precision timing, and possibly molecular restructuring. The human approach was somewhat different. The service droid suddenly began emitting loud alarm sounds and spinning in circles, smoke pouring from its upper vents. The guards exchanged confused looks before the senior officer gestured for the other to investigate. As the guard approached, the droid abruptly stopped spinning and projected a holographic error message in hegemony script. When the guard leaned closer to read it, the droid's manipulator arm shot out, grabbing the guard's security badge and simultaneously emitting a high-frequency pulse that temporarily disoriented both guards. By the time they recovered, the droid had somehow bypassed the security scanner using the stolen credentials and disappeared into the lab. Inside, Operative H shed the cumbersome droid shell with relief. "I'm in," they reported through the communicator. Looking for the crystal now. The lab was a sterile environment filled with equipment that would have made Earth's most advanced research facilities look like children's toys. Operative H moved quickly, scanning the workstations and storage units. According to Intel, the crystal should be in a quantum-locked storage unit, Commander Zaveru's voice instructed through the communicator. It would require multiple authentication factors to access. Operative H murmured absently, already ignoring the advice in favor of a more direct approach. They had spotted something interesting, not a high-security vault, but a simple desk drawer with a physical lock. It was so anachronistic compared to the rest of the technology in the room that it practically screamed important stuff inside. Using tools hidden in their casual Earth clothing, tools that would have been impossible to conceal in the skin-tight UGC tactical suit, Operative H made quick work of the primitive lock. Inside the drawer was a small crystal, glowing with an inner light that shifted through colors no human language had names for. Operative H carefully lifted it, examining it briefly before tucking it into a specialized containment pouch. "I think I've got it," they reported. "Heading back now." "Impossible," came the immediate response from Commander Zavaru. "The crystal should be secured in." Yeah, quantum locked storage. Guess the doc isn't as trusting of hegemony security as you'd expect. Can we debate later? I've got the shiniest paperweight in the galaxy, and I'd like to get out before someone notices. Security forces are converging on your position. The Vulcan sniper's voice cut in. My thermal imaging detects multiple hostiles approaching from adjacent corridors. Time for Plan B then, Operative H said with alarming cheerfulness. There's no Plan B in the operational parameters, Commander Zavaru responded, alarm evident in her voice. There's always a Plan B. Usually involves running really fast and making a lot of noise somewhere else. Before anyone could object, Operative H had retrieved a small device from another pocket and attached it to a nearby terminal. The lab's lighting suddenly shifted to emergency red as alarms began blaring throughout the section. "What have you done?" demanded Commander Zavaru. "Created a diversion," Operative H replied, already moving toward a ventilation shaft that, according to UGC intelligence, should have been far too small for any biped to navigate, and maybe slightly corrupted their environmental control system. Nothing dangerous, just uncomfortable. Throughout the research section, temperature regulators began malfunctioning, sprinkler systems activated randomly, and doors began opening and closing in patterns that made no logical sense. The resulting chaos was exactly what Operative H needed to slip through the ventilation system undetected. Meanwhile, the UGC team was facing increasing pressure from hegemony security forces. What had begun as a controlled engagement was rapidly becoming a fighting retreat. "We cannot maintain position," Commander Zavaru reported. "Security forces are deploying predictive algorithms to anticipate our movements." "Then stop being predictable," Operative H suggested, voice slightly strained as they squeezed through the narrow ventilation shaft. "Take a page from my book. Do something stupid." There was a long pause on the communication channel before the commander responded. "Tachyony triplets. Implement protocol Omega-3. Commander?" The triplets' harmonized voices registered shock. "That protocol is specifically designated as a last resort. It violates 17 UGC tactical guidelines and implement immediately," the commander interrupted. What followed was something unprecedented in UGC operational history. The Tachyony triplets, instead of maintaining their perfect formation and synchronized energy projections, deliberately desynchronized. Their formerly harmonious energy fields became a chaotic, unpredictable storm of conflicting wavelengths. The result was spectacular and bizarre. Security systems designed to predict and counter UGC energy signatures suddenly found themselves processing contradictory data. Automated defense turrets swiveled uselessly, unable to establish target locks. Predictive algorithms crashed under the strain of analyzing what appeared to be impossible tactical decisions. In the confusion, the UGC team began a fighting retreat toward their extraction point. For the first time in the operation, they were not following a precise, predetermined path, but rather responding adaptively to the changing security landscape, improvising in a manner that would have been considered heretical just hours before. Operative H, meanwhile, had emerged from the ventilation system into a docking bay where small transport vessels were kept. "I've got a way out," they reported. "Meet you at the rendezvous coordinates." "Negative," Commander Zavaru responded firmly. "Return to the planned extraction point immediately." "Look, Commander," Operative H said while eyeing a small shuttle, "their security is adapting to your team faster than you can adapt to them. But they're not watching these shuttles because no one would be dumb enough to steal one. See where I'm going with this?" The commander's silence spoke volumes. Trust me, Operative H added, already working on bypassing the shuttle's security lockout. Sometimes the dumbest option is the smartest play. Across the station, Commander Zevaru and her team were pinned down by increasingly accurate security responses. The Tachyon triplets' chaotic energy field was beginning to harmonize again as their power reserves depleted. The Vulcan sniper's position had been compromised, forcing him into close-quarters combat, far from his tactical specialty. Commander, the first Tachyon triplet communicated urgently. We cannot maintain this disruption much longer. Security algorithms are adapting. Commander Zevaru's skin had paled to a sickly gray as she assessed their deteriorating situation. Their perfect plan had failed. Their improvised approach was failing. For the first time in her distinguished career, she faced not just mission failure, but the very real possibility of team casualties. All units, she finally transmitted, divert to Docking Bay 7. We are implementing the human's exit strategy. The shuttle's engines roared to life just as Operative H finished a hasty reprogramming of its navigation systems. The hangar control center was blaring security alerts, but the automated door mechanisms were caught in the same system-wide chaos that Operative H had unleashed earlier. Doors stuck halfway, they reported, eyeing the shuttle bay opening that had frozen at approximately half its full extension. Might be a tight squeeze. That opening is mathematically insufficient for the shuttle's dimensions, the second Tachyon triplet observed as the team rushed into the docking bay, exchanging fire with pursuing security forces. Operative H shrugged. Math's never been my strong suit. Everyone aboard. The UGC team piled into the shuttle, professional discipline momentarily abandoned in favor of hasty retreat. Commander Zevaru was the last to board, her tentacles firing a final barrage of precision energy bolts that temporarily halted their pursuers. Your calculations are correct, she told the Tachyon triplet as the shuttle door sealed behind her. The opening is approximately 0.7 meters narrower than this vessel's width. Like I said, Operative H grinned from the pilot's seat. Sometimes you gotta be bad at math. With casual disregard for both physics and common sense, Operative H slammed the shuttle into full thrust. The vessel screamed toward the partially open bay doors, metallic screeching filling the cabin as the shuttle's outer hull scraped against the unyielding frame. The Vulcan sniper closed his compound eyes. The Tachyon triplets' exoskeletons vibrated at a frequency that might have been the equivalent of a scream. Commander Zevaru's tentacles wrapped reflexively around a support beam. With a final, tortured shriek of metal against metal, the shuttle burst free into open space, trailing sparks and fragments of its outer plating. See? Operative H said with unfathomable cheerfulness. If you're bad at math but good at momentum, things work out. The structural integrity of this vessel has been compromised, Commander Zevaru observed, her voice remarkably steady given the circumstances. And we are now being pursued by hegemony interceptors. Yeah, but we got a head start, and I've got one more trick up my sleeve. Operative H tapped a sequence into the shuttle's navigation system that made the computer emit an alarming series of error notifications. Remember how I said I reprogrammed this thing? Well, I may have also messed with its quantum signature transmitter. The pursuing hegemony vessels suddenly broke off their chase, their formations scattering in apparent confusion. What did you do? The commander demanded. Made us look like 17 different shuttles, all heading in different directions, Operative H explained. Their targeting systems can't decide which one is real. Oh, and I set the self-destruct sequence to activate if they get too close to any of the phantom signals. That's... The first Tachyon triplet seemed at a loss for words. Brilliant, the Vulcan sniper finished unexpectedly, his compound eyes studying Operative H with newfound respect. All part of the service, Operative H replied, patting the pocket containing the stolen data crystal. Now, I believe your fancy UGC cruiser is waiting for us at the rendezvous point. Commander Zevaru's skin had begun to shift toward a blue tinge, the Octavian equivalent of relief. Yes, and they will be most surprised to see us arriving in a stolen hegemony shuttle. First time for everything, Commander, Operative H grinned, including successful improvisation. The debriefing room at UGC headquarters had never witnessed such an unusual atmosphere. Where typically these sessions were exercises in precision reporting and algorithmic analysis, today's gathering had an almost celebratory air. Admiral Zoza's holographic form dominated the center of the room, all 16 tentacles flowing in patterns that, to those familiar with the species, indicated profound satisfaction. The data crystal has been secured, he announced, and preliminary analysis confirms it contains the complete bioweapon research we sought to prevent from falling into hegemony hands. By any objective measure, this mission must be classified as an unqualified success. Commander Zayvaru, her skin now displaying the rich blue patterns of professional pride, inclined her head in acknowledgement. The success is largely attributable to unconventional methodologies, Admiral. All eyes and various sensory organs turned toward Operative H, who was lounging in a chair that had been designed for an entirely different species anatomy, somehow making it look comfortable nonetheless. Hey, credit where credit's due, they said, raising a fresh cup of coffee in salute. Your team adapted pretty well once they stopped trying to be perfect. The Vulcan sniper, normally the most reserved member of the team, spoke up. The human's approach had merit I had not previously considered. Perfection is predictable. Unpredictability can be tactically superior in certain contexts. The Tachyoni triplets buzzed in harmonized agreement, their exoskeletons shifting in what might have been embarrassment. Our simulations never accounted for intentional inefficiency as a viable strategy, the middle triplet admitted. Admiral Zyos's tentacles formed a pattern indicating thoughtful consideration. This operation has provided us with more than just the recovered data crystal. It has forced us to confront a philosophical weakness in our approach to tactical operations. We became so predictable that our very perfection became our vulnerability, Commander Zayvaru acknowledged. Even our adaptations followed predictable patterns, which is why, the Admiral continued, effective immediately, I am implementing a new strategic directive for all high-value target extraction operations. The room fell silent, all attention focused on the Admiral's slowly shifting tentacles. Henceforth, all extraction teams will include at least one human operative. The announcement sent a ripple of astonishment through the assembled team. While they had grudgingly accepted Operative H's contribution to their mission's success, the idea of making human inclusion standard protocol was revolutionary, perhaps even heretical by UGC standards. Admiral, the first Tachyoni triplet ventured cautiously. While the results of this single operation are undeniable, we must consider whether they can be replicated. Perhaps this was merely statistical anomaly rather than. I have reviewed the complete operational data. Admiral Zyos interrupted, his tentacles forming the pattern for conclusive evidence. The correlation between the human's improvisational tactics and our breakthrough moments is statistically significant at the p less than 0.00001 level. The triplet's exoskeleton dimmed in chastened acceptance of the mathematical argument. Besides, the Admiral continued, our rivals are already attempting to adapt to our new methodology. That seems unlikely, Commander Zavu interjected, her tentacles forming a pattern of polite skepticism. The operation concluded less than one standard cycle ago. And yet, the Admiral's holographic form expanded slightly to project additional data. We have intercepted communications indicating that the hegemony is already developing what they term human unpredictability simulation algorithms to counter our new approach. Operative H burst into laughter, drawing startled looks from the UGC operatives. They're trying to create an algorithm to predict unpredictability? That's like building a machine to calculate randomness. Precisely. Admiral Zyos agreed, his tentacles forming what might have been the equivalent of a smile. They fundamentally misunderstand the nature of the advantage. It cannot be simulated or replicated through artificial means. The Vulcan sniper's compound eyes narrowed in sudden understanding. Because the true unpredictability comes not from randomness, but from the peculiar evolutionary history of humans themselves. Their contradictory impulses, their emotional decision-making, their willingness to take irrational risks. Hey now, Operative H protested good-naturedly. We prefer the term creative problem-solving over irrational risks. The semantics are irrelevant, Admiral Zayos continued. What matters is that we have identified a tactical advantage that cannot be easily countered. The hegemony, the Cartelian Directorate, even the quantum collective, none possess the uniquely chaotic cognitive architecture of humans. Commander Zayvaru's skin rippled with reluctant amusement. I understand the Cartelians have already attempted to create an artificial intelligence system that mimics human unpredictability. It reportedly caused a cascade failure in their central planning matrix. Can't algorithm your way to being human, Operative H said, propping their feet on a nearby console before quickly removing them at Commander Zayvaru's pointed look. Trust me, we barely understand ourselves most of the time. Which is precisely why, Admiral Zayos concluded, the new directive will be implemented immediately. Resources have already been allocated for the recruitment and training of additional human operatives. As the meeting concluded and the team began to disperse, Commander Zayvaru approached Operative H with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. I have observed that humans often celebrate successful endeavors with ritualistic consumption of fermented beverages. Would such a celebration be appropriate in this context? Operative H grinned. Commander, are you asking me out for a drink? The commander's skin flushed a deep purple. I am merely suggesting a cultural exchange that might further enhance team cohesion and interspecies understanding. Sure, let's go with that. Operative H agreed, still grinning. Lead the way. I'm curious to see what passes for a bar in UGC headquarters. As they exited the debriefing room, the Admiral's holographic form lingered briefly, his tentacles forming a pattern that, in a species culture, represented profound cosmic irony. The most perfectionist military organization in the galaxy had found its greatest strength in deliberate imperfection. Within a standard galactic year, the impact of the new directive had rippled throughout known space. The UGC Extraction Corps' success rate, which had dipped to an alarming 94.392% before the implementation of what became informally known as the human factor, now stood at an unprecedented 99.997%. Interstellar mercenary markets experienced a bizarre economic phenomenon as human operatives suddenly became the most sought-after specialists in the galaxy. Competing factions offered increasing bounties for experienced human infiltrators, only to discover that replicating the UGC success wasn't as simple as adding a human to the team. It's the integration that matters, Admiral Zayos explained to the UGC High Council during his annual strategic review. The synthesis of perfect precision and human chaos creates an approach that is greater than the sum of its parts. On the fringes of UGC space, Commander Zayvaru stood on the bridge of her new command vessel, the UGC Cruiser Calculated Risk, a name that would have been considered oxymoronic in UGC culture just a year earlier. Beside her stood her executive officer, recently promoted from consultant to full UGC commission, Commander H. Approaching the Cartelian outpost, Commander reported the Quantumite pilot, its crystalline structure glowing with confidence. Implementing the slightly wobbly approach vector as specified in the operational plan. Very good, Commander Zayvaru acknowledged, her skin displaying the rich blue patterns of professional satisfaction. Maintain course. Extraction team, prepare for deployment. At the deployment bay, a team of UGC's finest waited alongside their human counterparts. The elite and the unpredictable, the perfect and the improvised, working in harmony. You know, Commander H remarked casually, back on Earth, I was just a thief. Now I'm helping reshape galactic military doctrine. Life takes weird turns. Commander Zayvaru's tentacles formed a pattern that, after months of working together, Commander H recognized as the Octavian equivalent of a wry smile. The cosmos is indeed full of what your species calls irony. The UGC spent millennia perfecting its operational protocols, only to discover that imperfection was the missing element. Planning less and improvising more, Commander H nodded. Told you would catch on. As their vessel prepared to extract yet another high-value target from yet another supposedly impenetrable facility, the two commanders shared a moment of perfect understanding. Throughout the vast expanse of the unified Galactic Confederation, on thousands of worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, the most elite extraction teams now always included at least one human. Not despite their imperfections, but because of them. The universe, as it turned out, had quite the sense of humor after all.